Okay, this is contact report number 4. Fourth contact, Saturday, 15 February 1975, 1:48 in the morning. Semjase, in the last days I have caught many strong thoughts from you. You occupy yourself enormously with the most diverse things, but for your own safety, I am not allowed to answer all your questions. Billy, I thought you told me that you would not penetrate into my thoughts unless it was urgently necessary. Semjase, sure. I also did not penetrate into your thoughts, but nevertheless you directed yours so intensively towards me that I just had to catch them. You have a phenomenal power of thinking that only very few human beings have already as a characteristic to them. Billy, I had not thought of that and did not want to bother you. Semjase, it's quite all right that way, because it allowed me to occupy myself with your questions, which unfortunately I am not allowed to answer in as much detail as I personally would like to. I myself, and all others as well, trust you completely, but there are Earth humans with the most diverse means of Gewalt at their disposal who could elicit every secret from you. I certainly know that you would defend yourself against it, but they might still elicit certain things from you. Therefore, we must exercise precaution and care in every respect. But now, pose your questions freely and at your discretion, because I do not want and cannot answer you dictatorially by making your sequence of questions my own. Billy, thank you, Semjase. You speak perfect German. Where did you learn to master this language? Semjase, a good question, which is, however, easy to answer. Just like the Earth human, we also have to learn a language, except that it is much easier for us and causes us less effort. We are in possession of all Earth languages that are presently spoken and were ever spoken at an earlier time. This means that we have accurate records of them in the most diverse forms. Language training courses, as you would call them, were compiled from them. This work is done by linguists and machines similar to those you call computers. Then other machines of a similar kind serve to transmit and enter the language into us. This means that we get connected to such a machine or apparatus, through which we then receive the desired language transmission. This occurs through a hypnosis-like state induced by the machine. As a result, the language terms and senses are implanted and registered. This process takes 21 days. After that, we need another 9 to 10 days in order to speak the language correctly. This means that we then have to practice speaking and pronouncing in the right way with the help of the apparatuses and the linguists. To learn a language, we need 30 to 31 days in this manner. In this regard, the Earth humans, particularly so-called language institutes, already work in a similar manner, but they implement their language courses with audio tapes. This is already the first path toward building and using apparatuses and machines like ours. You do also already work on such computers in various places. Billy, that is about how I imagined everything. Semjase, I know. Billy, my next question relates to the fact that you explained to me at my/our first meeting that the Earth humans would not be able to travel to the deep and real outer space unless they would invent another method of propulsion. I can only imagine here that with this drive, you mean that it must be, for example, a beam propulsion system, a hyperdrive, so to speak. In my opinion, this would have to be a drive that somehow alters the material matter, presumably when the speed of light is exceeded, and the beam ship is thereby hurtled into hyperspace, in which space and time paralyze themselves, as you have already explained. I suppose that space and time collapse to such an extent that they are completely canceled out. Semjase, You would make a great scientist. And if one considers that all your knowledge is based on autodidactic work, then that means a phenomenality. You are absolutely right with your assumptions. To traverse the real outer space, a drive is needed that exceeds the speed of light many times over. But this drive can only come into operation when the speed of light is reached. It follows from this that another drive regulates the normal speed up to that of light. This means, thus, that a beam ship must have two drives. First, the normal drive, which allows acceleration up to and below the speed of light, and second, the hyperdrive, as you call it. So the drive that generates millions and millions of times the speed of light, thus the hyperspeed, by which hyperspace is broken into. A space in which every mass expands in relation to the increase in speed. As a result, time and space collapse and become the null time and the null space. This means space and time simply cease to exist. And this is exactly what allows the fact that distances of countless light years can be rushed through in fractions of a second without a time shift occurring. Billy, this means that just as much time passes for a beam ship and its occupants as does on the home planet or on another planet or star. Semjase, of course. So, for example, when we leave our Pleiades and need around 7 hours to reach Earth, then only 7 hours pass on our home planet and on Earth as well. We need this long of a time because we first have to fly beyond the planetary ranges with the normal propulsion and can only go to hyperspeed once very far out into space. We then also come back from hyperspace far outside of your solar system and fly here with a normal drive. We are never allowed to break into hyperspace while too close to a planet. Billy, I understand. The breaking into hyperspace would presumably also tear one or more planets into the superspace and spew them back out as deadly projectiles when the beam ship bursts out of it. Perhaps even various huge comets have become raging and dangerous objects speeding through outer space in this way, due to the fault of irresponsible starfarers. Semjase, you are partially right. The hyperspace really must be broken into only very far out in space, because otherwise planets would be dragged into it. Also, regarding the exit from hyperspace, you were thinking absolutely right. It is also a fact that some comets originated in this manner, but only some, because most of them have been led onto their dangerous paths by other and natural events. So you are only partially right about this. If you assume that all comets were created in this manner, as you might have suspected. But the fact is that such incidents are due to irresponsibility, as this does exist throughout the entire cosmic space, not just on the Earth. And irresponsibility also exists when highly developed intelligences make their first hyperspace trials and carry them out too close to planets. The recommendation for safety has indeed to be calculated, and it states that the hyperspeed may only be initiated 153 million kilometers away from the nearest planet. Billy, that's very interesting, but I did not suppose that all comets originated in the manner mentioned. But how does such a hyperdrive actually work, and what about the normal drive? Semjase, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to tell you any details about that. If the Earth scientists had more specific details, then they would solve their propulsion problems in a very short time. But this is neither in our nor in the cosmic interest, because the Earth human is still not free and not mature enough to fly around in the outer space. However, at the given time, which is not too far away anymore, she or he will find the solution of his or her problem all by themselves. I may only tell you so much that very many of your scientists are nevertheless already on the right track and are theoretically working and researching on the necessary drives. I may also tell you that these also concern drives that are already known in their basic features within your initiated scientific circles as light emission drives and as tachyon drives. The light emission drive serves as normal drive and has the function of moving the beam ship to planets or within their vicinity up to 153 million kilometers of distance, so up to the safety limit. Beyond that, the tachyon drive, among other things, is put into operation if greater distances are to be bridged. This is one of the hyperdrives capable of controlling hyperspace as well as space and time. We call these two drives by other names, but the sense remains the same. We have a different language than the Earth humans, and so I have to explain it to you in the terms that you understand. Billy, that makes sense to me, but I do not understand how such a drive functions. I know the basic concepts of an emission, and I know what tachyons mean, but I cannot imagine or guess the actual processes with a drive resulting from them. Can you tell me more details about that? Semjase, no, I'm not allowed to do that, because by doing so, I would reveal the secret of the whole drive and also the generation and utilization of the tachyons, but also the secret of the emitting drive. Billy, thank you. That is enough, because I do not want to push you. But there is one more thing that interests me. If I look over everything and think over it carefully, then the shape of the beam ship does not play a major role. But a disc-shaped ship should be the ideal form because it offers the least resistance aerodynamically in the area of an atmosphere, which certainly should also be the case in water. Semjase, sure, you have gotten to the heart of the matter again. Basically, though, the shape really plays no role. However, the disk shape generates the least resistance in an atmosphere, and it furthermore has the largest possible areas to make the drives on or through it fully effective. Billy, that is clear to me, but how is it possible that a beam ship can reach tremendous speeds in the gravitational field of a planet or in its atmosphere without it burning up or the passengers simply falling victim to the immense inertial force? Semjase, that is very easy to explain, and is also not a secret anymore to the Earth humans, at least not to the scientists. The beam ship is surrounded by a radiation protection belt, which allows every waft of air to be diverted immediately without displacing it. Exactly the same thing also happens in the outer space, which is only teeming with inconspicuous minute particles. Thus, this radiation protection shield has the function of protecting the beam ship against all external influences and resistances without destroying or displacing anything that collides with the shield. All things intruding or offering resistance simply get deflected without causing a displacement. A displacement would in fact already mean resistance and lift the possibility of the unlimited speed. Through this radiation protection shield granting a sliding off, another important effect is triggered, which is of great significance and of vital importance for the passengers. As a result of the sliding off technology of the radiation protection shield, the gravitational pull of a planet is neutralized at the same time. Excuse me. However, this does not mean that it is simply destroyed, displaced, or canceled. In the same way, the air, as well as any radiation or particles and magnetism, etc., are simply diverted, with the result that the normal gravitational force and attraction force prevail in the beam ship. Excuse me. This means that a beamship of the Earth harbors exactly the same attraction force inside as it also prevails on the Earth. This attraction force of a planet is not always equally strong, by the way, but is subject to a certain change, something which will be noticed by your scientists in foreseeable time. By the sliding off of the radiation protection shield, that is the sliding off of the gravitational force, i.e. the attraction force, the beamship practically becomes an independent miniature planet, which can to almost the speed of light fly through any atmosphere without risk. Wow, no burning up in the atmosphere. And since the attraction force of the planet concerned no longer has any influence on the beamship, gravity doesn't influence it. I'll stick that in there. Since the attraction force of the planet concerned no longer has any influence on the beamship, the passengers also feel as normal and unweighted as if they were on the planet itself, always provided, of course, that the planet itself corresponds to their anatomical capabilities and is not subject to greater attraction forces. In the beamship itself, the attraction force is tuned to the passengers, of course, and is absolutely controllable. When passengers of beamships from other worlds move on planets that are foreign to them and hostile to them in terms of atmosphere or attraction forces, then they use spacesuits and small transportable devices that produce exactly the same radiation protection shield for the respective Wesson as it is characteristic for the beamship. Billy, that is very detailed and plausible, but can you give me technical details about the construction of such a device? He keeps bugging her. Semjase, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to. However, I can assure you that your scientists are fundamentally already working on such devices, and the point in time is no longer very far away for them to produce them. However, it is within the framework of evolution that the Earth human being still first has to develop a lot regarding consciousness and spirit before he will solve these secrets and not simply use them to the detriment of others. In other words, we gotta chill. We gotta wake up. Even then, however, there is still the great danger that the barbaric Earth human will use his or her technical knowledge and ability and his or her technical achievements maliciously and might greedily to satisfy his desires for might. This has happened and continues to happen time and time again with other Wesson of other worlds, not only with the Earth human. But when the time comes that he attains the necessary technology to fly not only to Earth's moon but to other planets, then he must not do so unweightedly and in the hope that he will always remain victorious. In the outer space itself, dangers of various sizes lurk, and also other inhabitants of worlds are not simply left helpless in the face of an attack of another race. There could follow deadly defeats and complete enslavement for the Earth human, which would be equivalent to a falling back into primeval times. But it could also be that the planet Earth becomes completely destroyed because the technical prerequisites for this are already created in the outer space, with very many humane and inhumane races up to the last relative perfection. If the Earth human wants to carry his or her barbaric imperiousness and greed for might out into the outer space, then he must reckon with his or her complete destruction, and no other planetary beings will rush to help him or her. In other words, we get out there and we start warring, nobody's going to help us. We're on our own. Okay, but the Earth human must The Earth human being must also prepare to defend himself against malicious intruders, which he can only accomplish, however, through a complete unification of all the peoples of your planet. The dangers from outer space are great and are lurking in all corners of the galaxies. Mostly, these are inhumane, might-greedy beings who know no feelings or only inferior ones or those very badly out of the control of the good human nature. Others, however, know how to defend themselves, and they inevitably always do this radically. If indeed a major war were to shake the outer space, then entire galaxies might be destroyed. All it would take would be wars of entire systems, which could then result in their own destruction. That is why peace is cared for and is, if necessary, enforced with logical or illogical gewalt. This must be taken into consideration by the Earth human when he will be controlling the outer space in the near future. Other world races do not let themselves be senselessly warred or driven into exile, servitude, and exploitation, as is customary among the peoples of Earth. They will defend themselves by gewalt, and still, for a long time, they will be vastly superior to all the technological possibilities of the Earth humans. Where this is not the case, however, they are often under the protection of further and higher developed intelligences whose techniques reach the final relative perfection. Billy, well, those are very nice prospects. Semjase, it is the only possibility to preserve peace and not to bring death and depravity over the entire galaxies of the universe. But all this has to be told to the Earth human because his or her consciousness-based rationality is still very weakly developed. The Earth human must become familiar with the thought that his or her ancestors had brought the whole humankind and the Earth itself to the brink of ruin and had to partially evacuate the planet in a wild escape. As she said earlier, that's where the Plejades come from. They escaped from Earth because it was about to blow up. Anyway, but it should also serve him or her as a warning that greed for might and barbarism are deadly attributes. That this is the case has also been experienced by a second race in your solar system. In their boundless hatred and in the uncontrollable greed for might, they destroyed themselves right down to the last, and hardly any Wessens survived the fight. They annihilated and destroyed their own planet in a tremendous explosion, and nothing remained of it but many thousands of asteroids that still orbit your sun today, as a memorial to the deadly irrationality of human beings. Remnants of the once splendidly blooming planet Milana, which its inhabitants destroyed in their barbaric greed for might and irrationality. Billy, girl, that is very interesting. Do you know any more such things? Semjase, certainly, but that must be enough for today. Next time, you shall learn more. So, okay, that's the end of this contact report. Basically, one of the things she mentioned was the planet Milana, which is now our asteroid belt. Used to be a huge civilization, and they destroyed themselves. Anyway, she's saying if we go out in space and we go getting froggy out in space, it's going to get ugly. Well, we don't stand a chance. There's other races that are much more advanced than we are that'll stomp us like a bug. Just my thoughts. Anyway, that's it for this one. We'll get on to number 5 here in a bit. See ya.